order. I click the little button to say you're okay with that. All right, and then I am hitting the go live now.
Good morning, everybody. And good morning. We've got a friend here. So this is my longtime friend that I didn't even know was longtime for a long time, but Raymond Flanagan. And Raymond, tell us a little about yourself and where you come from and where you are and who you live with and or who you love. And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, I'm 71 years old, born in 1951 in the Bronx. I'm the fifth of six kids. My wife, Juleen, who's named after her two grandmothers, Julia and Kathleen, she is 76, just had her birthday. She is one of 12 children. She was raised in Queens, a daily churchgoer. I think her mother may have had a couple of miscarriages before the first child and thought they might not have any kids. And well, they have 7 girls and 5 boys. They unfortunately just lost one a few months ago, but most of the family had been intact, you know. So she grew up in a very, very large family, went to Catholic schools. I went to Catholic school through 4th grade. My father was a fighter pilot in the war. My mother was a secretary, and both of our moms lived to a ripe old age. Both of our fathers checked out early. My dad at 57, her dad at 61. Both were smokers. And my father had esophageal cancer. Her dad, I think, had lung cancer. So when we met, both of her parents were gone. We met in 1986. And, you know, I was single, a bachelor for 35 years. She had been married once with 2 sons. And she told me on our first date that she had a son who was a sophomore in high school and another that was a senior. And I was shocked. I had no idea that she was a few years older than me because she looked so beautiful. And it was never a problem for me. And, you know, the boys could have given it a big thumbs down if they wanted, and glad that they did it. So we got married.
How did they win out?
From our first date. Yeah.
They made a good choice.
We got married a year from our first date. I was working in restaurants, starting a photography business. I had been working in picture framing some. And, you know, from 16 years old, I waited bus tables and then waited tables right through college. So I always was serving people and got used to, you know, serving some of the elderly. You know, one of our tricks back in the day was always to call the old ladies girls, you know, hey, girls, how are you? And they were always thrilled to be called girls, you know. So,
you know, the only time that doesn't work, Raymond, is when you're trying to buy like alcohol and somebody wants to card you when you're my age. And it's like,
yeah.
I get it, but I don't. I mean, I've got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's like, seriously?
Yeah. So, yeah, my wife was in, she early on was working in group homes. She was a social worker, master's in social work, trained in early childhood education. And for the last 30 years, really worked in early childhood, managed 10 programs, was known all over the state of Connecticut. And I guess I was known all over the state of Connecticut as well, because I wound up as a high school soccer coach. I played Division I college soccer, played our team went to the Final Four, Division I in 1971. I was a walk-on at a tremendous program. And my senior year, the coach told me, you know, we have a couple of junior college All-Americans, and I don't think you'll see any playing time this year. I don't know what you want to do. And I decided I'd sit next to him and learn how to become the best soccer coach I could be. So it was years later that I had moved to Bethel, had been married, and my wife had seen some old guys kicking around, and I got back involved in soccer. I wound up coaching high school girls for 2 years and then 5 years with the boys. And I'm proud to say that my last 3 years with the boys, we went 56 wins, 1 loss, and 5 ties, and a couple of state championships, and a number 3 ranking in the USA. So we had a pretty good run.
Wow. So you know how to build a team and coordinate a team and coach a team.
Yeah, I took over a program that
important.
Yeah, the program that I took over was in a bit of disarray, and I brought in 3 other coaches with me. most high schools, they're lucky if they have one decent coach. And I had 4 guys that were all capable of coaching. And we turned the program around quickly and did it in a nice way with sportsmanship awards and all kinds of stuff. So we're in the High School Hall of Fame here in our town, the first team that was ever inducted. So, teamwork, it was never
Wow.
about the individual work, but about the team. And my wife's practice and her job was the same. She built teams of people, hired people. And, unfortunately, it was in 2014 when she was on her way to work after church. She was a daily churchgoer. She was hit by a Ford F-350 truck that was coming out of a gas station that couldn't see around a school bus park and slammed into her. So she was shook from side to side and hit with airbags, and treated and released at the emergency room. And we figured she'd be okay in 3 or 4 days, but wisely, through the advice of a friend, we went to a orthopedic and a neurologist, and the neurologist discovered she had a severe concussion. She had some vision issues with convergence, and she had to wear prism glasses, but she wound up out of work 6 months. And then finally, through PT and stuff, they put her back to part-time work and then eventually full-time. But when she went full-time, she started having problems with her appointment. She might drive halfway across the state for a Thursday afternoon appointment and find out that the appointment was scheduled for Tuesday and she had missed it. So she realized that she was struggling and was very good at all the tech stuff, the cell phone, the computer, but she was missing appointments and having some struggles. So she retired. And really, for, as I said, we tried to do everything we could. We followed Dr. Bredesen and Dr. Shurzai and his wife, who felt that what's good for your heart's good for your brain. So we really kicked up our nutrition. We both dropped. I was 194 pounds 5 years ago, and I'm at college playing weight right now. I'm at 158, and she's at the weight she was just out of college. And what she did was kick up her exercise routine. So we have a beautiful track just around the corner from our house. She was walking 3 miles a day. And I'd ask her, how many laps did you do today? And she said, well, I did 12, but I didn't run the whole time. And this was right up until this year before going into a facility. So, and we also have 2 dogs that she walked religiously, always thinking that the dogs need more and more exercise. So her Apple Watch was screaming, you did 9 miles today or 16,000 steps, so I think that her fitness and our nutrition, I think we went after it as best we could.
Yeah. So being a good coach, you get the idea of capacity is capacity, and you can tune somebody up. You can't make them be what they can't be, and they've got to want it. I mean, they've got to want it too. And so over the course of your journey, I'm figuring that there were some balancing issues you had to arrive at repeatedly.
Yeah. Because I have a photography and frame shop downtown. So I got to a point where maybe I should close the shop and be a full-time, care partner at home. But in this last year, she was still driving up until a year ago, February, because she was a great driver and she wasn't getting lost. I had a tracker on my phone. She got lost once in the 3 or 4 years, and that was no big deal. But a year ago, February, we went on a vacation, and just about 45 minutes into our trip down to the Carolinas, we were going to Charlotte. I have a niece in Charlotte, and just as we hit the Tappan Zee Bridge in New York, she said, I got to get home to Ray and the dogs. And I said, no, Stevie, I am Ray, it just, it had happened once or twice, but really the whole trip down, and we were planning a 10-day vacation. And by the time we got to the Carolinas, we had dinner with my niece and her kids. They were all wonderful. And my wife said, we got to get going home. I said, I really can't. I just drove 12 and a half hours, but we stayed only the weekend and we drove back home. And that's when I decided, no more on the driving, because it had progressed. And we gave her a car. She had a beautiful car. We gave it to our granddaughter, and she was good with that. And then I started to look I knew right from the get-go. I was already in a support group, but I knew from the get-go we had to put a team together. And I was fortunate to find Darlene Carmen, who's one of your people. Yeah. And Darlene suggested you. I didn't look on first. Right? I thought I knew everything there was to know, but I finally started watching some of your stuff, and I bought some DVDs. I bought your books. I've shared the books with others. I've shared the books with family members, and I've told them to go on your site. So you probably got a few that are looking. And Darlene has been phenomenal. And then it got to a point in November where it was not safe at home anymore for my wife, and the biggest problem is that she's very mobile.
Yeah.
So, I had planned to keep her home forever. And I went to an agency that told me it was going to be $9,900 a month for one person that wouldn't drive and wouldn't wake up in the night. And by this time I was sleeping in a separate room, because sometimes my wife didn't recognize me, as her husband was threatening to call the police to, get me out of her house. And I'd say, I'll tell you what, I'll sleep in the front room and maybe he'll come back in the morning, or I'd go out and come back. And, we'd get through that. But it got to a point where, she was a daily churchgoer, and she might wake up in the middle of the night and stand out in the driveway at 4 a.m, or, maybe think about walking to church. So it became unsafe. So we looked around. I had found a facility in February. I had checked out a facility when we had the problem in the Carolinas. And then it was time to go down there and see him again. And it's it's conveniently, 5 minutes away from my house. It's a beautiful, gorgeous facility. They have a kind of a chain of them. They're called Maplewood in Connecticut. And I think there's some down actually toward you, but there's one in New York City. And unfortunately, the CEO just passed away a couple of weeks ago, the guy who had built these. But, so it was the transition. We moved her in, furnished the room, put pictures in there, and it was a challenge. I have to say I butted heads with him a bit in the first month, and I was ready to yank her out of there until I brought her home at New Year's and realized, what, I just couldn't do it. And and the two gals that I had helping me for a year both thought that, hey, I guess you won't be needing us anymore. And I said, you know what? We'll see about that. And I found that the one-on-one engagement that these two gals provide my wife is huge. And unfortunately, since COVID, most of these places don't have the staffs to really engage people one-on-one every day. So you're a lot of group activities where you're 15 people in a group, and my wife sometimes gets up from the activity and goes to her room. So one gal goes in 4 mornings a week, and I'm there every morning myself, and I'm there when I close my shop. So I have dinner with her every night, or sit while she's having dinner, and spend some time every morning and every night. And then we have a great church network where we have people from church bringing her communion. There's one bringing her communion this morning, and I committed to take her out to church every Sunday and still bring her home. We have a beautiful garden and vegetable garden. So I want her to always be familiar with our house. It sometimes is a little confusing, but for the most part, it's going okay. And it's it is what it is. And I see her.
It is what it is, as we say. It's what are you going to do with it? It's like, wow, Raymond. So I would say the thing that's most remarkable is that for a good long period of time, you were able to really handle things pretty normally. But then in this last window of time, there was a real recognition, and it was through both support group, looking ahead, paying attention, noticing cues, that you were able to do this transition stuff. But as a good coach, you didn't just, say, okay, here's the new team, go for it. You were like, yeah, let's work this out, and recognizing we have missing positions on this new team that I'm going to need to fill with people that are skillful, so that the person in the center, your wife, Juleen, is still getting what she needs in care, because otherwise it would be neglect. And you're not into that. Yeah. And it being her in the home, that was neglectful too, because she couldn't manage the home anymore. She couldn't handle being in that space. Yeah. Now, your work at doing this, not at no cost to you, emotionally and physically. So you have your business, which keeps you going and keeps you connected to human beings. And you go by and you spend morning and evening, which is a familiar pattern for the two of you. And then you gradually transition some other things, paying attention to her symptoms. So what would you say would be two of the really, she's still doing well in two areas now, and there's one area of concern you're trying to work on? Must always be. So what you got?
Well, I think as I've learned from you about the left-hand side of your brain with the music and rhythm, I've grown up listening to a ton of music. She has a son who's a graduate of Berklee School of Music in Boston, a jazz guitarist. He's tremendously, and her father played piano, and she played piano growing up. So right from the get-go, we continued. She hadn't been taking lessons. I hired a guy to give her lessons while we were going through this. And then when she first moved into the facility, there was a piano outside her room. And that's one of the reasons we chose that room. But then they moved her to a different floor. And I put a piano in her room. We bought an electric piano that I brought. So she continues to play the piano in her room. As much as a lot of people haven't embraced technology, I continue to look for ways to use technology. So we put in a couple of security cams, the little Ring cameras. So I can monitor her room. She's in a studio with a one bedroom with a bedroom and a living room. So she got all the comforts of home in there. We've got a refrigerator in there with a toaster and a tea kettle that are under lockbox. So when guests are in there, they can hook her up and have treats. But she's continued to she remembers the music and she remembers prayer. So we watch a live stream mass every morning from Breezy Point, where she used to go as a child, and her sons were baptized there. And then on Sundays we go out to church, and no matter what happens on Sunday, I figure we got to get out and we continue with the two gals to get her out in fresh air, keep her walking. And so what I've planned to do now is, when I see what it costs to have someone in a facility, we had short-term care insurance, or home care insurance that was going to be $100 a day. But her fees are, it's pretty extraordinary. I think it's $8,200 a month, and some people are paying as much as $15,000 a month. We don't have that kind of money. We had some IRAs. We check with the legal thing, so we're working off her IRA, and I realized that we're going to have to do some fundraising, because at some point, if we can't afford to keep her there, she's going to be going on Medicaid and put in a facility where she might be in a triple room, and I don't want to really see that happen. So we started a website called juleensteam.com, and just went live a couple of weeks ago, and has raised $12,000 2 weeks.
Oh, Raymond.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very realistic look at what's the worst part. The funding. The funding is really hard, and to view, like, if I don't have it, I can't have it for her. It's not about you, it's really for her. And the state of our coverage in this country is so abysmal for people living with dementia and their families. And many people never figure it out until way too late. So you have something with you that I want you to make sure you share with everybody, because that's super cool.
Yeah. Well, that's our in my nutrition coaching, I've just, with a Vitamix blender, I've been making my own peanut butter and smoothies and stuff. So we decided to sell this Juleen's Team peanut butter. I don't know if you can see, but it's going for $100 a jar. That's as much as food costs have gone up. Not too many people are getting $100 a jar, but I know that, $20 a jar ain't going to make it as far as trying to raise enough money to come up with $8,200 a month. So with our Social Security, and another $5,000 out of pocket a month pretty much pays for a month. So already, as I say, the website's raised a couple of $12,000. But the major thing is we're having a walk for Juleen on May 13th of Mother's Day weekend. Her mom's birthday was on Mother's Day weekend. So we always tell them, so people are going to be walking here in Bethel at the track. I've secured the track. We'll do a mass at our local church at 9:00. Then we do the walk from 11 to 1. And then Maplewood, the facility, will host a reception. They're very excited about it. And they're going to host a reception from 2 to 4. And I have a live band coming in. And that will be for the residents and the families that are visiting on Mother's Day weekend, plus all our walkers. And we have walkers. She has a niece that'll be walking in Switzerland. I have another guy's going to be walking in Ireland. I got our maid of honor from our wedding is going to be walking on a cruise ship. And I asked her recently, how many people on that cruise ship? She said about 1,000. I said, well, see if you can't get about 900 of them to participate in our walk. We could use the help. But anyway, there'll be people walking in California and the state of Michigan and wherever they walk, so that's exciting. And her network of social work, her agency was called Education Connection and Change Ed Advance. She was literally known all over the state of Connecticut. The mayor of Danbury and state reps came to her retirement. So she trained many, many people over the years, and those people all will be participating.
Wow.
So it's going to be big. And so even though we've raised some money so far, I think there's a lot more coming. And this website will be ongoing. And I think we'll do some other projects down the road. The idea was to raise awareness of not only what it costs us, but what it costs all these families and the difficulties it is to pay. And, when we talk Medicare, if you break your leg, they'll take care of a cast, but I've always found that, teeth and eyes and ears are not covered. But the main thing is your hard drive is really not covered. And then you wind up, losing everything you have. And, I think a year ago, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, first dementia, and then a year later, Alzheimer's. And that itself was quite a challenge. We did the Montreal test and, we got the possible dementia diagnosis, I think in like 2017. And a year later, she did the test again and they called us to come on in and sat down. I saw the neurologist coming across the room. I said, oh boy, this doesn't look good. And we sat down. He says, so how you doing? And I said, well, we're doing okay. He says, well, based on your test last year, we had diagnosed you with dementia. Based on your test 3 weeks ago, we diagnosed you with Alzheimer's disease. Do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, we got plenty of questions. And I said, what can we do? And he said, well, she can take Aricept and you can join a support group. There's a good one in the town next to us, And I said, well, we've been kind of following these doctors that feel that, sleep, meditation, nutrition, exercise, music, dance, all these things can kind of help slow it down a little bit, and maybe some supplements. And then he said, well, everyone's trying to sell you something. I said, oh boy. And we switched at that time from the local neurologist to Yale New Haven with the advice from a brain doctor, a concussion doctor. And the Adler Center at Yale was wonderful. I think our first meeting with them, 90 minutes, a caseworker with me, another person with her, checking her out. And we went there twice a year. And that's the other thing, the diagnosis at the neurologist, they said, take Aricept and see you in 6 months. Well, if you were sick with something else, they're not going to tell you come back in 6 months. They'll say you see you in a week or something, but there was no answers. So I started to seek answers and try to find out. And, I've had a few things in my life where I've had to figure it out quickly. And as a coach, my job as a coach always was to use what I learned over the years and share it with these young players, teach them how to become great players quickly. And I don't have time to putz around with this stuff right now. I need to learn as much as I can to help my wife and help my family. And we're doing that,
Wow. So you are like, I want to say the poster child or the poster coach of how to help yourselves, your family, but others as well. And so that idea of it's not just about you, it's not just about Juleen, it's about this whole issue that we're living with, but it's in a positive direction. I mean, you took hold of it, you said here, and you're out and you're there. And that's what we love about how you've done this, which is, one of the reasons you're here telling your story, because it's an important story to get out there. It's like we can sit alone and go, this is horrible and I don't know what to do. Or you can figure out, well, this is what we're going to do. And here's how I'm going to do it. So you've got a shirt. I see your shirt and it's May 13th. Now, there she is, the woman with the dogs.
And, that's walking the dogs at her beach house. Her family had a beach house in Breezy Point that she's gone to, and we still go down. She doesn't, and I wear my shirt all the time, and she's proudly wearing her shirt over at the facility. But I got my shirt on there too.
Right.
But anyway,
player.
I'd like to send you a shirt, and maybe Matt too, if I could. Teepa, someone can maybe send me an address to send, and I'll I'll send you some of my peanut butter too. And
Oh,
I'm looking
hey.
at that. I'm looking at that November date down there in the Carolinas. I just might be coming down because I'd like to
Come
learn
on
a little
down.
bit
We would
more.
love to have you as part of that because you put together the pieces of the puzzle about as well as I've heard anybody put together pieces of a puzzle.
Oh, thank you.
So I know you had some support doing that because you're not a solo player. You play on a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on a support group from HFC, which has been great for me. It's been really a couple of years, and you know, as much of a struggle as it was, because when I first got on a support group, Juleen was in the earliest of stages.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of the people in the group had things that were way further along, and but we've been like family, and the support group has been huge.
Yeah.
And your group has been huge. You know, so you know, and you know, as well as music being important for my wife, I've been playing guitar at home, and we've kept the dogs, and music is a huge part for me to get through the day, and to keep trying to live, and exercise. You know, I've got to stay fit because I'm no good to her if I've had a stroke.
If you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So if you guys don't feel energized after this interview, I don't know how you could not. Matthew, what are you thinking as you've been out paying attention out there in the world out there as you're listening?
Yeah, lots of great people coming onto the thread and saying, yeah, go Ray. We love Ray. He's made an impact on a lot of folks. And definitely really amazing because Ray, this connects for so many folks out there going through this journey, and so many of them feel alone. And this gives them somebody they can connect to, somebody they can be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly like what we've been going through. And that's exactly what we're experiencing. And so such an amazing testimony. And we have links out there that are connecting to an amazing article that you shared with us, to your website. And hopefully more people will get a chance to go click that and check you out. So thank you, Ray, so much.
You know, it's funny when I go visit my wife, Teepa, you get a kick out of this. I walk in the dining room and, you know, they're predominantly ladies in there. So I tell people I am like Clark Gable in this place. When I walk in there, I am you know, can you answer a question for me? Yeah. I think they think I work there. Yeah. And, you know, maybe someday I will work in the field. Yeah. And, you know, so it's, you know, I'll break out the guitar at some point. I'm no virtuoso, but they're an easy audience to please. And one of the things, they have a great karaoke guy in there. His name is Gary. And, you know, I watch these people doing karaoke and some of them kind of get lost. And I have guitars and amps and microphones. And I said to Gary, Gary, have you ever tried using a microphone in the karaoke? And he said, no. I said, well, let me bring one down. And I brought a small amp and two mics. And unfortunately, I wasn't there the first day he did it, but I'm telling you, he came to me the next day. He said, Ray, you would not believe it. You know, there was one guy who was kind of asleep most of the time. They stuck a mic in his hand, and next thing you know, he was Frank Sinatra. And most people have never heard themselves coming out of an amplifier. And, you know, my wife has already gotten in trouble a little bit in there because she's a social worker. She's helped people her whole life. There's a woman who we sit next to at dinner that's in a wheelchair, and they called me in the principal's office a couple of weeks because my wife had tried to help wheeling her in the wheelchair. And with insurance regulations, you're not allowed to do that. So I said, well, what happened? And they said, well, after they probably told her you can't do that, she took off kind of jogging with her. And I was hoping that they were saying, whoopee, let's get out of here. But, you know, they said also my wife's very strong, and they had a hard time getting her hands off the grips of the wheelchair because I don't think she wanted to give it back. So unfortunately, because of insurance, and this country's run by insurance companies and banks, and, you know, there's all kinds of people out there from the church that could be helping, but you're only allowed to help a little bit. You're allowed to go in and say hello, but you know, my wife would like to help feed somebody or do something.
We need to, I mean, this is Teepa saying that we are going to be changing that because the numbers aren't going to allow us to keep doing what we're doing. Yeah. Somehow we've got to get around that box because that's just a box, and we got to figure out how to move that box.
Yeah.
So, Ray, thank you so much for what you've done and what you're doing. And May 13th, guess who else is up? Now, this year it's not my birthday because mine is May 9th. I
Oh,
was
wow.
working Mother's Day as well. So
Cool.
you came to the
Cool.
right house because,
Yeah.
you know, we got Mother's Day at our house too.
And I'm looking forward to meeting both of you two in person. And I'm gonna be sending you, send me some t-shirt sizes and an address to send them. And I'm gonna be sending you some t-shirts. And
Thanks,
maybe we'll
Ray.
have a couple. Maybe we'll have a couple more walkers in the Carolinas.
You might very well have a couple more walkers in the Carolinas.
And
So-
Teepa, if you mark my words, I'm gonna bring you to Bethel, Connecticut at some point because I'd like
I would
to.
love
I'd like
come
to
up
share
your
the
way.
PAC. I'd like to share PAC with a few facilities up here.
Cool.
I'm gonna
Absolutely.
make it happen. All
We
right.
make it happen. All
God
right,
bless you.
everybody out there, take care with your care and have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you again next time. Bye,
Thanks so
everybody.
much, Teepa. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Teepa. Bye, everybody.